Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Well, I'm actually a really special guest. If you've been listening of the podcast, you know from day one, early on, I had my father on the podcast way back in the day. He was my third guest, and so now he is returning to the podcast. But for the listeners that don't know who you are, Dad, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello, all participants. My name is Philip L. Wilkerson Jr. I was actually named after my grandfather.
That's excellent. And Dad, you want to tell me anything else about yourself? 30 years Army Colonel, Virginia born. All around great diet. Is there anything else you want to share with the listeners about yourself?
Okay, I didn't know how much detail you want. I am Virginia born. I'm the only child of Philip L. Wilkerson Sr. and Mary Johnson Wilkerson. I hail from Hampton, Virginia, the home of the Hampton High School Crabbers, and I had an opportunity to attend college here in the state of Virginia at the Virginia Military Institute, where I was a history major. From there, I entered into the United States Army, which I used that as my career. First, initially, I worked or served as a tank or armor officer, and then after being in the Army for 5 years, I went to flight school and ended up flying 25 years helicopters in the Army. I'm married to a Carol James Wilkerson, and we are very fortunate, very blessed to have two children, Philip L. Wilkerson III and Lois Mary Estelle Wilkerson.
Excellent.
That kind of something.
Yeah, that's great. And Dad, as we talked about, this episode is particularly, about your experience at VMI. You did give a brief explanation about going to college at Virginia Military Institute, but what you didn't share with the listeners was how historic that was. For those that don't know, my father, he went to VMI in 1968, and he was one of 5 first African Americans to attend this institution. So, Dad, just taking us back to high school, tell us, how did you end up at VMI as, one of the first black students?
Well, that's an interesting story, son. I knew early on that I wanted the military as a way of life, a profession. I say a little tongue in cheek because of John Wayne movies and watching a bunch of war movies when I was growing up. But for whatever reason, I decided, like when I was 13 or 14 years old, that I wanted to go into the United States Marine Corps. My initial ambition was to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point. I did mention briefly that I am from Hampton, Virginia, and for those who are not familiar with that area, it has a lot of military presence, both Army, Air Force, and Navy. So you can imagine was quite competitive to get a nomination to one of the academies. Because of that, I did play 2 sports when I was in high school, and not that I was that good, but between playing 2 sports and being an Eagle Scout in the Boy Scouting program, I drew attention to certain individuals. In the Hampton area, there were 2 major military school presence by alumni first VMI, and second the Citadel, which is the military college of South Carolina. Now, with that said, I actually did not get a nomination to the United States Military Academy, so I was suggested that I could go to their. They have kind of like a bootstrap program where you do a year, I guess, junior college under their auspices, and then you can to see if you could competitively get in, or just go to another school, which I decided that I did not want to waste a year of college life. So basically, I applied to 3 schools out of high school. Norwich, which is the military college of Vermont, the Citadel military college of South Carolina, and VMI. To be very honest with you, and you may think this is a little far-fetched, when I actually applied, I did not realize that there were no other African Americans at the school. I went to visit with 2 of my high school classmates, both African American, and they showed us around the campus. And still, I guess we were just naive, or we missed. We just didn't center on that point about the absence of black faces. So it was, I want to say, a surprise, but it was because you never know what opportunities are availed to you. So when I actually showed up the first day to sign in, then it hit me that all the upperclassmen were, all the people processed in were Caucasian or white, which it led to a lot of other different opportunities. And I'll just mention one. One of the things they do with freshmen is they assign you to a company by size. Well, that size is probably incorrect, by height. And there were 5 of us, as Philip had mentioned, 5 of us initially in the class of 72, which we were signed in 68. And just so happened that 2 of us were about the same stature. One of us, named Randolph, and one Wilkerson, they actually had a policy. They did not want to have a company have all of the African Americans in it. They wanted to basically spread us among the core. And I guess that they were trying to ensure that it was equal dissemination, and there were no focus on one element more than the other. Because of that, I ended up going to F Company. F Company is the F and A companies are your tall companies. And for the entire 4 years I was at VMI, I was the shortest guy in my company. And you can ask my son, I don't really consider myself a short guy. I was 6 foot tall. But I was in F Company was at the time was known as the basketball company, because most of the basketball players on scholarship were in F Company. So we had a pretty good height on average height on everybody. So that's my story about how I got to VMI and how I ended up into F Company.
I love that.
Okay.
No, I said I love that, Dad, and I didn't mean to cut you off, because I was just saying that you did not realize that you were one of the first African American students or black students until you got there. Take us to your first day. How you got there, and I know the story about who dropped you off and all that, but you go ahead and share that.
Yeah, I was also going to share. I mentioned earlier that I'm a Virginian, so I'm actually from the coastals. Hampton is considered Tidewater. That's kind of like the slang name for the area. It consists of basically Newport News, Hampton, Virginia Beach, Portsmouth, Norfolk area, centers around the lower portion of the James River, which flows into the Chesapeake Bay. I also mentioned that that area is heavy, has a heavy military presence. Now, that's worthwhile thinking about because more so than other parts of the state of Virginia, the Tidewater area tends to be a little more progressive because they have the military presence. So we had a number of mixed marriages, sailors who married Filipinos, Koreans, Air Force members who married English people. I mean, the military presence had an impact on the society of that area. Now, where Virginia military is located is in the western part of the state. Comparatively, they are not as progressive. And I don't want to use the wrong word. Let's say they're more conservative. And to get from the Tidewater area to Lexington, that's where Virginia Military Institute, you basically take two interstates. You take 64 east and west, and then you take 81 north and south. The reason I'm going through all this is because my trip home or my trip down to VMI, there was a sign, big sign, that introduced you to Rockbridge County. Rockbridge County is the county in which Lexington is located. Now, the sign is no longer there, so listeners, if you want to go verify it, you're about 50 years too late. But believe me, there was a sign that said, "Welcome to Rockbridge County, Virginia's home of the KKK." Jeez. And I tell that all the time because when I saw that, I went, what in the world have I got myself into? Again, coming from the Tidewater area, which tends to be a little more liberal and not conservative, to go to school in that area. The first day, my father died when I was 13. My mother or my mother's two brothers, my uncles, were very a close-knit family. There were actually five of them. My mother was the third child of the five. So the two boys, two brothers, were younger than my mother. So it was two older girls, my aunts. My mother was the middle child, and then my two uncles. The youngest uncle, or the youngest child, was my Uncle James, and he actually, along with my mother, took me the first day. And Philip, I don't know if you ever seen it now, but there's a picture of him actually walking me through the arch to go to the car to pick up my stuff after I had signed the book. When you first get to the VMI, the first thing you do is you have to read this obligation statement, and then you sign in, and they put down your name, where you're from, and what time you're signing in. Then from there, you walk over, pick up your stuff, and then your adult parent, guardian, whatever, walks you to the arch. You take your stuff, and then you're picked up by a senior cadet or a cadet that's senior in like a sophomore or junior, and he actually takes you to the location of your company. So that's what I remember. And the first day, all I remember is that there was a lot of I won't say confusion, but it was hectic. It was a lot of yelling, get here. Now, another thing I would share with you, because I did play sports, I was not unfamiliar to being yelled at. So that really didn't bother me or surprise me too much. And plus, you have to remember, I wanted to be a Marine. So I was in pretty good shape coming out of high school, and I thought I was a tough guy as far as mentally tough, because like I said, all my life I wanted to be a Marine.
I love that
So that's
story.
kind of
Yeah, and I love that story, Dad. And one of the things I was thinking about was like when you saw that sign pulling into Lexington, was there ever an instinct in your mind like, hey, I know it's Uncle Gummy, but Uncle James, but like, was there ever a moment like, yo, turn the car around, or you just saw that sign, glanced over at it, and was like, I'm laser focused on this is what I want to do.
that's an excellent question, and the only way I can answer it is my focus was to be a Marine, and I was willing to do whatever I had to do, with the with the legality and morality. Uh, Whatever I had to do, I was going to do to get that goal. Um, I was thinking when you mentioned um, about us talking about this, and what I wanted to share with you and all the readers, there were two things the most that I was afraid of the entire 4 years of VMI. Only two things I was actually afraid of. The first is failure. I be honest with you, I don't know how I would have, if I was either flunked out, kicked out, did not do the physical stuff that required. If I had to leave, that was my greatest fear. I just could not fail. And the second is I did not. How do I say this? I did not want to embarrass my background.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a very tight knit family on my mother's side, the Johnsons. I went to a very strong Baptist church, First Baptist Church. Everybody was very supportive. All my teachers. So everybody in the neighborhood, the longer I stayed at VMI, knew. In other words, that's all. I mean, people ask me if I was afraid, about my life, or was I afraid that, that somebody would, snatch me up, or did people mistreat? That never crossed my mind. Failure did, though. There were times where I would study stuff and I couldn't get it, and I would actually go to the library and break out in tears because I did not want to fail something and have to come back to Hampton as my perception as a failure. That was a great motivating factor for me. A lot of people said, well, how did you put up with a lot of that crap? Well, I put up with a lot of crap because those 2 days I told you, I did not want to be a failure, and I did not want to embarrass the people that were very supportive of me getting there in the first place. And I will tell you, none of us achieve anything alone. There's the sacrifices my parents made, the sacrifices that my Boy Scout leader made, the involvement of the church, the involvement, because I went to some real good schools. My elementary school and my middle school, I guess they call it junior high school, were all African American. I was in the second class to integrate my high school, which I'm very proud of as well. So I was in the second class to integrate my high school, and I was in the first class to integrate my college. It was just the sign of the times. You really don't realize what you're doing or the impact that what you're doing may have until years later. I've actually had people tell me that when I tell them I'm in class of 72, oh no, you can't be from VMI in 72. They didn't have any blacks there. And then that's when I had to tell them, well, I was in the first class.
Well, that's great. And then you said specifically one thing that really would draw into this next question was like that you didn't do it alone. And so, and you said that, wow, studying was very hard. So can you speak to like, and this is the first time I heard it, the importance of that rat and dike program? Because I'm pretty sure having someone attached to you as a upperclassman, or the dyke as it was very important. And you being the first black student, I'm assuming your dyke was a white guy. So can you talk to us about that relationship of having, a assignment of, I guess, was he like a mentor, or, really guided you, or was just doing his job? Like, can you speak to that relationship, your rat line people as well as your assigned dyke?
That again, that's a great question. Yeah, and the way it works, Phil, the way it works is the senior chooses you. Um, so as a freshman, I mean, you don't have any say. So you have a senior first classman come up and said, "Hey, rat freshman, you are going for the next year be my dyke." Now, some because of the number of dispersions, most firstclassmen have more than one dyke, because usually the freshman class is a lot larger than the first class. The first class have gone through, the academic rigors. That this is the last year. You take my class. I started with 411 in my class, and we graduated 165. So whatever kind of, I'm not a math guy, but whatever kind of attrition rate that is, you can see if the rat class, and I don't know what the numbers are, the rat class that came in when I was a first classman, but I can tell you it was larger than 165. So usually you have more than the senior has more than one freshman that serves as his dyke or mentoree. Now, the way the system works, I know the names throws a lot of people off, and please, readers don't, or participants don't get wrapped around it. It's basically a mentor program. There's certain privileges that a first-classman has. Give you an example. First semester, you can't go to your mailbox as a freshman except for very few hours. I think it's 2 during the whole day. The first class can go to the mailbox area anytime he chooses. It's actually he or she now, but chooses. So one of the things that your first classman can do is check your mail anytime that he checks his mail. And the value of that is exposure. Anytime you go to, as a freshman, to a common area, you are under very strict discipline rules. The way you walk, you got to walk in a certain path. We call it bracing. You have to have good posture. And if you don't have that, you set yourself up to have people correct you. The bottom line is you want to minimize those opportunities, and your senior can do that for you by doing certain things for you. In turn, you do certain things for them. We had to make up our beds every day. Well, we would also make up our seniors' bed. When we had a parade, we would get the freshmen, we would get ready early for the parade so we could go downstairs and assist in our senior preparing for the parade, because usually that's where all the seniors had all the high-ranking officers, so they had extra stuff to put on, sashes and ribbons and stuff like that. It was kind of a tit for tat arrangement. You do something for me, I do something for you. But beside the point, and you hit on it, Phil. Beside the point, the first classman had been there for 4 years, so he could advise you on a multitude of things. Like a lot of times, a senior would choose a guy who is going to follow in his same curriculum. It didn't work out for me because I kept on changing mine. But that's beside the point. The first class we had, I can't say enough about them. I tell people all the time, anytime you start something new, you can start it basically with one or two attitudes. You can start something new with the attitude that this will work, this will succeed, this is going to work. Or you can take the defeatist attitude because you don't want to change anything and say, well, I don't care. It just ain't going to work. The class of 69 had made up their mind that racial integration was going to work under their watch. Now, does that mean everybody was happy about that, the integration? No, I didn't say that. But as a class, the class leadership, the administration leadership, they had in their mind that this was going to work. And I be honest with you, I think it did. Now, another part that I tell people who ask me, you got to remember, VMI or any college is nothing but a reflection of our society. So let's look at what was going on in '68. Our society was struggling with civil rights change. I mean, that was prevalent on the table. I mean, we had people assassinated: Martin Luther King, Robert and John Kennedy, Malcolm X. I'm just saying that our society had made up its mind that enough is enough. We're going to have to change some of this stuff. So that's the same thing that filtered through the school. So when things happen, even today, when people ask me to make a comparison, I said it is hard to do that because our society is dealing with a lot different and more stuff. Now, some of the stuff is similar, but some of the stuff is almost like we taking a step back. My opinion. I'll stop at that. That's my political thing there. I won't go any further. But what I wanted to share with your readers or with your participants is that any situation is a reflection of our society. So there were people there that had made up their mind that VMI was going to integrate. The first classman that took to me was from the state of New York. Matter of fact, it's Roslyn Heights, New York, is actually where he's from. I don't know his family situation, but I don't like to use or put labels on people. But he wasn't on scholarship, and I would say his family was not worried about any financial situation. So we can call that rich or wealthy or whatever term. Like I said, I don't need. And he made a point because he was a ranker. He was a regimental operations officer, which is like the number 5 guy in the whole corps. So pretty much he went out of his way to give me as much, I hate to use the word protection, but to ensure that I was treated fairly. And that's all I wanted. I just wanted to be. Your freshman year at VMI, at least what I went through, was not easy. But I just wanted to be treated the same way everybody else was treated. And he was, in fact, there to ensure that. Like anything in life, it all depends on individuals and relationships. We did become very close. He used to laugh at me all the time because his point is he was going to graduate from VMI, go to the University of Virginia, get his master's degree in business administration, and then go run his family's business. He used to laugh. He said, "You one of the few guys that not few guys, but you one of the guys that actually came to a military school because you want to go in the military." So I was kind of gun ho, and he thought that was a chuckle there. And you know all the jokes about Marines. Marines supposed to be, jarheads and stuff like that. He used to get a kick get a kick out of that. So,
I love that. And then, so one of the things I'm thinking about now is that now you have an opportunity because you went through the freshman year, the rat year, and you made it through, obviously. How was it on the flip side, the inverse side, when you were upperclassmen and you got to pick someone? How was that? And was the person you picked black or white? And whoever you picked, how did you use your experiences to, quote unquote, protect them or make sure that they were treated fairly?
you know what? Again, your questions can't be more timely. I talked to my dyke. Well, we have a Zoom call of last Wednesday. I think I told you about it last time. We were with the new superintendent, and the guy who actually pulled that all together was my dyke, or the freshman. I actually had two. I had a white dyke, and then I had an African American dyke. The white dyke, we lost communications. He was a history major. He was actually from New Jersey. He was. I didn't tell you the size thing. The senior that picked me was from Delta Company, so he was a little short guy, and like I said, I was from F Company. So I reversed it. I picked the guy from Delta Company, and a guy from C Company. The dyke that I am in most contact with still, name is Ronnie Norman. Hopefully you'll meet him sometime. He lives down in Woodbridge. Spent 30 years in the Air Force. Came to the VMI as a starting running back from Northview High School, which is in Norfolk. And so it was a lot of different factors, but you're right. I had to, and that's what I was trying to explain about the dispersion, because we had more freshmen than we had seniors. I mean, our class just whittled down. That's why we're so close as a class, because a lot of us didn't finish. But Gary Taylor and Ronnie Norman were my two dykes, and one of which I spoke to last Wednesday. And every now and then he still calls. I mean, we both are old men now, but he still calls me sir, and I kid him out. I said, "You don't have to do that. Stop. You're making me feel old as hell." But and his point is, old habits are hard to break. I think he's just pulling my leg, to be honest with you. But so what I'm saying to you, it deals on personality, it deals on situations. If I'm not a great communicator, but if he doesn't hear from me in like 5 or 6 months, he'll call just to check on me. That's because of his personality. He's just a good human being. Like I said, I lost contact with Gary. I guess that's one of the missions I could pick up as I go further into retirement, see where he is. But you have to make an effort. But yeah, I don't know if I answered or confused the question at all. But it really does depend on personality. It depends on as far as picking criteria. You form your as a senior, you form your own. Like I said, I was in a big company, so I picked two little guys. I picked guys from my area. That was the criteria, even though Gary's from New Jersey. I picked Gary because he was a history major, and so was Ronnie. And by that time, I had settled on history. So, I mean, that was the criteria. And you do that, the practical reason you do that is because you know the professors they are going to have, the courses that they're required to take, for graduation in that curriculum. I mean, there's other reasons. I mean, you just don't just do stuff willy-nilly. Well, I didn't just do stuff willy-nilly, but I mean, you can tell where they can get help. I mean, a history major is a history major is a history major. So It just worked. It worked. It worked out for me. It worked out both ways. As far as trying to educate, like I said, I try to take as much. I use the experience that I had with my dyke to form the relationship that I had my own dyke. It's almost like being a dad. There were some things that my dyke did that I thought was super, and I copied those. And there's some things I said, well, when I get a chance to be, the first classman, I'm going to change. Because there is no book or what have you to what you have to do and what you don't have to do. I just use those experiences.
I love that. And so, Dad, think about it going back and setting the scene, between 1968 and 1972, and being in, I guess, Rockingbridge County. Was there ever a time where you were saying, I'm going to use my voice, and there's something here at VMI that I did not agree with? And I know this story. If you're really keying in on this question, Dad, is there was anything where it was like, this is a tradition of the school that I'm not getting down with, regardless if everyone else is doing it?
Well, one of the things that was a tradition, I think they changed a long time ago, is at all the sporting events, when the team scored a touchdown or a basket at a basketball game or a goal in soccer, they would play Dixie. And as a freshman, when people asked me, yes, I didn't particularly like it, but again, I told you I was willing to do anything as long as it wasn't illegal or immoral, because I wanted to be a Marine officer. Well, when I became a upperclassman, because I had formed relationships within the Corps, because I had a rep with folks in the Corps, and with the administration, when I stopped standing up. Now people would look at me, and I had my own class, different classmates asking, "Man, what's wrong with you?" But no one challenged me to the point where they said, "Well, we're gonna kick you out, or we're gonna beat you up." Or I mean, I'm not all that, but it didn't happen. I mean, people I guess, accepted that I was doing my thing. Now, when I tell people I couldn't do that as a freshman, they would have ran my behind off. But when you find something that you feel is an injustice, a lot of times the only way you can change it is within the system. Well, you have to get in the system to change the system. Now, I think I told you this story before. If I didn't, I'm remiss. I had a partial athletic scholarship to VMI. I mentioned my father had died when I was 13. So basically, I was getting aid. And I got hurt playing freshman football. Couldn't play anymore. So they obviously said, you're not playing any sports, so you ain't getting sports money. I mean, they need to give it to people who play sports. So I went over, I got a note to go over and see the dean. I'm a third class sophomore. He said, we are taking your partial athletic scholarship away. And I'm going, oh, shoot. In my mind, I'm going, okay. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I can't argue about it. I'm not playing anymore. So, you just don't give them it. The dean said, do you want to stay here at VMI? I said, yes, I do, sir. I said, I want to be a Marine officer. He said, well, I'm glad to hear you say this. Now, come on, sit down here. And he pulled out 2 books. I think I told you that, Phil. Mm-hmm. He pulled out 2 books of nothing but scholarships and fellowships. And he just said, go through and find what you qualified for, and I did. So I basically picked up 3 other form of scholarship fellowships that supplanted, for lack of a better word, took the place of the partial athletic scholarship. And I think I shared that with you because VMI is no different than any other college. So I'm saying they have alumni when they die or if they just give, and a lot of those scholarships are not even challenged or taken. Now you don't know about them off the top of your head, and you need to have somebody in the administration to show you what's available, and you have to get all the information. I got all of that, but they got them. So that's my story. And the reason I share that particular story is by the time I got through that year and started my sophomore year, my reputation at the school, for whatever reason, they wanted to keep me as much as I wanted to stay there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
They had made an investment in me that they actually were going to be able, or they thought they'd be able to benefit me being an alumni. So it actually made sense for them to keep me there. And obviously, I still wanted to be a Marine Corps. It was to my benefit for me to stay there. So it's kind of, so what I tell people, when you're given the opportunity, just do the best you can with the opportunity you're given. And if nothing is perfect, so if you see some injustice or what you feel is insensitive and stuff, you may have to bite your tongue till you get to a position where you can actually affect change. And freshmen don't affect change at VMI. You're not, because that's not the way the system is designed. It's designed for you to incorporate into their system. Now, I'm saying the best way to change the system is from within. So you got to get in the system. And I think if you talk to any one of my classmates, they felt the same way.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
It bothered the hell out of them. Yeah, it bothered the hell out when we were freshmen, but we did what we had to do. We were respectful. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. We ducked some stuff too. There is a statue of Robert E. Lee. Once you leave post going downtown, and if as a freshman, just freshman, you had to salute that statue. That was part of your harassment, part of your freshman training. Well, a lot of times we would walk an extra 2 miles out of the way so we wouldn't have to go by that statue. You follow again? The most direct route carried you by that statue to downtown, let's say. A lot of times we went out of the way so we wouldn't have to go by there and salute. You can't do that as a freshman. But, I mean, there are innovative ways. But, yeah, like when I was in first class, I was one of the 7 company commanders. Ain't nobody gonna say nothing to me. The regimental commander and I were, he's the #1 cadet. He and I went to Marine Corps training together. I mean, we're tight. We're still tight. A guy named Chris Earl. He ain't said that to me. So, I mean, I was in the system there. So I just told people. And oh, by the way, you were saying how do I affect change? If a guy was in F company, nobody, and I only had when I was a first classman, I didn't have any, let me think before I tell a lie now. I know when I was first classman company commander, I only had 2 black cadets underneath me. I don't think I had any up until then. So for 3 years, I was the only black cadet in F company. And I end up, by a lot of reasons, I ended up being the company commander. So when I got black cadets, I didn't, like I said, if they were at a game and they were in a company formation, They watched me. I didn't stand up. They didn't stand up. And nobody said anything to me. I mean, I had people say something to me, but nothing that they could change anything because I was company command. Your guys are not standing up. Okay. Gotcha.
I love that because what I'm noticing and what I'm hearing is that, I mean, obviously you leverage your position of power to voice things. So first, like for instance, if you didn't like injustice in a school, then you rise up through the school and become the principal. You know, I'm kind of like just using that visualization. Or if you didn't like the system around you in regards to politics, then you become a government official and you rise up through that, and you become a kind of like a John Lewis, right? So there's certain ways to maneuver um, power and use your voice. And then sometimes it takes, a little bit, not say compromise, but it takes like systemically maneuvering until you get to those positions to say, these are things I didn't like. So let me get to the table, um, per se. And when I'm at the table, then I could be the one that makes changes. Does that kind of make sense?
It does make sense, but again, what I want to emphasize is a couple things. Number one, you have to get into the system and be credible in the system for all that to work. And to do that, sometimes you have to do things that are not that calls for what I call intestinal fortitude. It may be great for your stomach, but you do it because you are not in the position. You don't have the authority. You don't have the statute to affect change within the system. Like I said, as a freshman, I wasn't going to change anything. Really, as a sophomore, I was going to affect it. So my intent, I think this is the first time you probably hear this, but my intent, I wanted to be a regimental commander. I want to be the number one guy militarily at VMI. That's what I wanted to do. It didn't work out that way, and those who got it, I mean, they were good guys. I'm not. Please don't misunderstand. I'm not complaining. I didn't get gypped. I didn't get. I'm not saying that, but my goal was to have the best possible record so I could be the number one guy. Well, the number one guy and I knew that I was a good guy. Now, we didn't agree on everything, but what I'm saying, when by the time he became the number one guy, I was like the number 7 guy. So, I mean, a lot of times stuff that I just tell him, this gripes my ass. I'm not doing this. And usually we found, and I didn't have to do that very, very much. Matter of fact, that's what I'm saying. Nobody really said anything to me seriously. The administration, I tried to have a rep with them. They knew that I was serious about the institute, about doing what I thought was right, honest, all that stuff. So I nobody kind of, I won't say just left me alone, but they just, I just did what I thought was right. Now, was it outright? I mean, did I throw a fist up? Or not? No, I didn't do. So, could I done more? People may say, yeah, you could have done more, but my point is, whatever you do with dignity, and you set the stage for the people behind you. And that's what I'm most proud of, is that the two things. The two guys that were my freshmen when I was a first classman, they both graduated. And Ronnie, the guy I was talking, ended up being a cadet captain as well. He was vice president of his class. I mean, he far exceeded whatever I did. I call it, he was a superhero. He was all conference running back. He, graduated history major, vice president of his class, regimental operations officer. Now, the only other thing that I tell you, Phil, besides my military desires at VMI, I really wanted to serve on the honor corps, and I did not get selected for that. Again, I'm not. That's not a complaint. It's not a regret. But I really thought. I mean, because I really believe in the honor system as it was administered when I was there. I just didn't see any black faces on the court because they weren't that many around, and I thought that I would be a good person to break that line as well. It just didn't work out. So it came later. I mean, there have been many members. Matter of fact, they actually had a conference not too long ago where the first black president of the honor corps came back, along with the first black regimental commander. A little aside there, the first black regimental commander, that is the guy who is the number one ranking officer in the Corps, cadet, is a guy named Charles McDew. And strangely enough, he graduated from Hampton High School.
That's amazing. And what I'm hearing too is that, I think it seems like a very proud moment is like in the way that you just talked about. His name is Ronnie. Is that correct, Ronnie?
Yeah, Norman. Yes, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Norman.
Yeah, the way that you talked about him was that, okay, those are things, you had individual goals, individual things that you wanted to do, but then you were able to still celebrate and not kind of live through him, but that for you was a win. That was a W. Like you seeing Ronnie be successful meant that you supported him in his journey at VMI, and that made you feel just as much a part of his, legacy, or you impacted him, so that in a way that was kind of still a W for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense at all. Matter of fact, you have in your possession, there was a cadet that did I'm going to call a bloodline, for lack of a better word. She just did some research about who was whose freshman and first-classmen. And if you look at that, you will see my name connected to Robert Moore, and then Ronnie Moore is his name, not Moore. Norman, Ronnie Norman is connected to me, and it goes on down. Matter of fact, we're, like I said, we talked last Wednesday, what we're planning to do. He has his dike, which would, I guess, be my grand dike, if you want to carry that analogy any further, want to go to lunch, the three of us. So it will be like grandfather, father, and son type thing. So I told him I was willing to do that. Now, this is just an offshoot. This coming year, will be the first time that VMI will have a female first captain. So the number one ranking cadet in the Corps is a female cadet. So that's another legacy point. The first females came into VMI in 1997. So they are celebrating this year their 25th anniversary of the first female cadet coming into VMI.
So you were, and I think this will be probably our last question, and then we'll go to our segment called Shot for Shot. But you, as you said earlier, you were on a call with the superintendent with a lot of the early classes of black gentlemen. You said from your class and a couple others after you. What do you think in regard to the future? We're talking now going to the future. What can institutions similar like VMI or just maybe higher ed in general could do better to support or keep up with the times? Because you spoke to it very well. And what kind of things did you share with that superintendent about what you as a class think he should do and stuff?
Well, there are a couple of things that are going on now in institutions that were not as visible or prevalent. Most institutions have a black student union. Most of them do. most most institutions have historically black fraternities and sororities on campus. Any one of those vehicles will serve as great venues to have alumni come back and talk to specific groups of kids that have in common. It could be a regional. In other words, you get all the I'm just using all the black students from, I don't know, Richmond, Virginia, and then invite several prominent black Richmond alumni, or you could do it history, or you could do it, I don't know, sports. Have all the current black basketball players, and then bring back, one or two prominent, successful. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that I can see that you can get alumni involved, because we all have a story to tell. Again, my biggest concern is our society, and setting the groundwork, because for this to work, Philip, our society has my opinion, has a degree of a sense of entitlement, and that doesn't, when you're trying to change things, that doesn't get it. You're not entitled. There are certain things that are right. There are certain things that are wrong. And when you approach them from that direction, people who have good hearts and sound minds know right and wrong. Entitlement, that calls for too much judgment. Too much judgment call. So if you approach a change because you are entitled to that change, no, you should have that change because it is the right thing to do because of X, whatever X is. Set the even playing field, give more opportunities to underrepresented groups. I mean, I haven't thought it complete through, but it's all a matter of the approach. The end may be the same, but the approach is different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's more so like, and what I'm thinking about with VMI does not have, they don't have like fraternities. They don't have Qs or alphas. So you're saying maybe there should be some embedded groups on the at VMI so that those that are alum can come back and talk to them, like other institutions.
They have what they call the Black Jamaji, which is their Black Student Union. So there are vehicles available. I was just saying all schools have some type, and we just need to be creative. Even if they didn't have black groups like that, you could still get all of the black history majors together and invite, or all the black basketball players together and invite black basketball. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to take advantage of alumni experiences and wisdom. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just using it because this is Black History Month, but I mean, you could use that for any, I mean, not only black, you can invite it for the whole core, but we are focusing now on minorities and minority inclusions. So there's some ways you can do that, is what I'm saying.
I totally agree.
And take advantage.
I totally agree. And what I'm hearing is that there needs to be an intentional effort by institutions to reach out to those that have graduated earlier, have them come back and speak to or connect with current students to bridge that, because I think there is a lot of power in stories from hearing from people that were ahead of you before, similar to like this podcast.
And see that it has so many benefits, because if you have that connection, then who to say when I graduate that I don't go work for, Mr. John so-and-so who came back to talk to me because he has his own company, Fortune 500 company. Who says that when I graduate, I don't go and play for the Chicago Bulls because Mr. So and So, who is the assistant coach, came back and talked to me. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. Um, Life is just full of relationships. That's why you hear me say so much about rep. The two things that they can't ever take from you is your reputation and your word. Um, um, the biggest thing is to say that guy does what he says he's going to, or he'll tell you that he can't, and he's honest. If if he says the sky is blue, then you pretty much can bet the sky is blue. Um, that to me, that's how relationships are formed. And even if people don't agree with your particular position, if you gain their respect that way, they'll listen to you. And if you're right, I believe it may not change, but the situation will change. I mean, that's why I believe, and we still have a lot of work to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but that's why I think we made the inroads we did in the '60s in civil rights, because the guys who were leading it were people of honor. Personal honor. They did what they said they were going to do. They did it when they said they were going to do, and they were doing it for the right cause. They weren't doing it self advancement. It was the right thing to do, and I think everyone wants to be. And they're always a minority. There are always people who bask in confusion, bad stuff. You can't avoid those. I'm just talking about the average Joe. The average Joe wants to do, in my opinion, according to John Locke, he supports me, or I support his theory. Man basically is good. He wants to do the right thing. Mankind. Yes, there's an element that don't, but most of them, if you strike that right chord, then I really believe people try to at least that's been my experience in my life. Like I said, the first thing I remember them saying to me is, we have to take your scholarship away from you. Well, I guess I could have freaked out. Or knowing my mother and family, she would have found a way for me to stay. So I'm being a little dramatic right there. But anyway, it would have been harder. Let's put it that way. But for him to follow it up by, do you want to stay here? Yes, I want to stay here. And because that's what I mean. That's, to me, that says it all. They wanted to stay, I wanted to stay. So we just had to figure out a way how we're going to do that.
I love that, Dak. And so I think now we're going to the part of a show called Shot for Shot. You get to ask me a random question. I get to ask you a random question. Do you want to go first or I go first?
You go first.
All right. So obviously you got some goals in your retirement, and we spoke to this earlier. But what is one of your goals now that you're a retired gentleman that you want to do? Something new you want to learn, something you want to do, somewhere you want to travel. What is a retirement goal for you?
You're sneaky, son. I think I told you I enjoy driving. So I want, before I die, I want to drive a train, and I want to drive 18-wheeler. But my biggest goal during retirement is to stay healthy. That's my biggest goal. So I have some work to do on that. But what else? To drive a train and to drive an 18-wheeler.
Well,
that's the direct answer.
So we know you're going to make that happen because you're a person that says you're going to do something. So what's your question for me?
What do you see is your life professional? Where do you want to end up professionally? Well, what's your goal?
Yo, you asked me. So you asked me a professional. Oh, So then it's like a career counseling question. So uh,
I'm,
yeah, it's a good one. This is a good one. Well, I don't know. One of the things I have said earlier, and I've said this earlier, I don't know if I'm going to be a permanent educator, but I do. I don't know. Right now, at this very current moment, there is something to be said about staying at an institution for long term and being someone of impact. So I always make the comparison. There's a gentleman at JMU. His name is Art Dean, and if you were a black student and you went to JMU, you knew Art Dean. Like everyone knew him. He supported them. He helped people get in. He was quote unquote the pillar for black um, James Madison. And so like right now in this current moment, when I close my eyes and I do envision that career part, I was like, that would be pretty dope to be at one place for a full career and be that like on the inverse, be that art dean to black male or black female black students period at George Mason. So I don't know. I mean, I can't predict 20 years or 30 years down the line. Uh, I know that regardless of what I'm doing, whether it's I don't know, corporate or whatever, it's got to be somewhere where I'm teaching people, like talking to people. I like education. I like
yeah,
people learning. So regardless of what I do in my career, it has to have a component of learning, has to be a component of instruction or teaching, has to be a component of like some form of mentorship and helping people after me. It would be cool to be doing that at one place for a long time. But if I got to do it in multiple different places, that'd be that too. But I think big purpose career thing would be educator, some form of fashion, an educator. That makes me happy.
well, the reason I asked that is because I can see you being either a dean somewhere or some school, a particular school, or when I say school, I'm talking about a sub school like the dean of history at so and so university, or a president of a small college. And the reason I say that, I'm not limiting to, I just can envision you in a small college. I think you would be, it's more intimate. To be a president of a university like Penn State University, I really don't think you really deal with students because it's too big.
Yeah.
But if you find some small um, um, liberal arts school somewhere where you have like a total enrollment of maybe 8,000 kids, see, I think that. And I do see you being an educator. I'm not surprised at all to educate. And the other thing I would share with you, I know we're supposed to be asked a question, but another thing I would share with you too, you said you enjoy teaching. Don't forget, people watch you. You can teach without ever teaching. You could, people can learn stuff from you with you out, not even saying a word. The way you handle situations, the way you deal with other people. I mean, there's a lot to be learned just by looking. Just keep that in mind, and because you don't know ever who's looking at you. Okay, your turn.
Well, that was good. That was I was shot for shot. You asked me one, and I asked you one, and then I think you did kind of speak to it. I definitely, one, I don't ever want to be a president of a large school ever. I see what that's a was it heavy as the head that wears the crown. Seems like not a fun job, and definitely you spoke to it another way was too is like I rather just get to know people, and I feel like if you're that far up, you lose. I guess the common touch. You don't really get to know everybody because like you said, it's not as intimate. I mean, I would love. I mean, I'd rather if it was an opportunity to be like a leader of 1,000 people or be a leader of 30 where I can know everyone's name. I'd rather do 30 because I'd rather know people. You know what I'm saying? So that's me. Um, but this is a great episode, Dad. I think we might have to do this again. This worked. You're actually one of my first people calling in and testing my new equipment, which is great. So obviously that's another first for you and first for me. And so now we're at the part of the show. It's called shout outs and plugs. So shout outs is anyone that you want to show love to, people you want to say hello, thank you. And then plugs is anywhere, if you want people to follow up with you or connect with you or, ask you questions, whatever you feel comfortable. Shout outs and plugs. So the stage is set for you.
Well, my shout out, I'm a shout out to my family, all of my family, extended and otherwise. And specifically, I want to shout out to my Aunt Flossie, who's 96 years old. Her birthday was on the 10th of January. And I want to give a big shout out to my mother-in-law, Gwen James, who will be 90 years old in May. So, again, shout out to the whole family, but those two individuals specifically.
And then plugs, anywhere that, you feel comfortable, things you're working on or people want to follow up with you, if you do.
Not really. I guess my biggest involvement now is with this group that we mentioned. It's called the Senior African American Alumni VMI, and it's the classes of 72, 73, 74, and 75. There's basically about 11 to 15 active participants, like I said, we're trying to show our support and love to the new Superintendent General Wins, who happens to be the first African American superintendent of Virginia Military Institute in the 158 years of its existence. So that's that.
That's awesome. And that's great. Now you see you're doing that, and shout out to all of them that are involved in that group. Well, Positive Filter listeners, this has been a great episode. I learned a lot from listening to this and talking to my father. Hope you learned something too, about change and making a difference and impact and all these things has been great. If you really like this episode, please share it with a family member or friend. Sharing this episode helps others learn as well. And if you want to call, you can call either call into the hotline. You can call 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Sometimes I share the voicemails that people send on this podcast. This has been great, and all of y'all take care. Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.